4 decades of diplomacy by Iran getting nowhere for Iran, no power, no growth, no nuclear weapons, and all we do is complain, not good enough, not good enough. And then what happens? We use 4 weeks of war, and we've made them the oil hegemon on the cusp of nuclear weapons. They couldn't have done it alone. This is not Iran as like the 20th most powerful country on the planet. This is now Iran as in the top 5.
For decades, the global strategy toward Iran followed a familiar script: sanctions, isolation, pressure, and the belief that time itself would weaken Tehran. And for a while, it seemed to be working. Iran's economy was strained, its military capabilities degraded, and its regional influence under constant attack. By early 2025, its nuclear infrastructure had reportedly been pushed back years, its top military leadership targeted, and its strongest proxies, groups like Hezbollah, severely weakened. On paper, Iran looked contained, even diminished. But then came the war. What was meant to be a decisive show of force, a short, overwhelming campaign to permanently cripple Iran's ambitions, may have done something far more dangerous. Instead of breaking Iran, it reshaped the entire geopolitical chessboard in its favor. Oil flows shifted, power dynamics hardened, and in the chaos of conflict, Iran found new leverage where it had previously lost ground. Today, Iranian oil is moving more freely than before, particularly toward China. Revenues have surged, by some estimates even doubling compared to pre-war levels. Control over critical choke points like the Strait of Hormuz has introduced new streams of income and influence, with reports suggesting millions of dollars generated per passing vessel. At the same time, instability across the region has driven global oil prices higher, indirectly strengthening Tehran's position even further. As a leading expert in security affairs and strategic conflict, Robert Pape argues that what we're witnessing isn't the collapse of Iran, but its transformation. A country that once struggled under pressure is now emerging from war with greater regional influence, stronger economic positioning, and, dangerously, a clearer path toward nuclear capability. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how this war may have flipped the balance of power in Iran's favor, step by step. From the initial strikes that failed to achieve their strategic goals, to Iran's calculated response that reshaped global oil markets, and ultimately, why this entire conflict may be leading toward a far more dangerous phase that nobody can easily walk away from. If you want to understand what's really happening beneath the headlines and where this could be heading next, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
We are now in stage 3. You see, the opening stage of the escalation trap is what we saw with smart bombs, hitting targets, killing leaders. They were tactically successful, but strategically failed. The regime didn't collapse, and there was new leaders that came on that were more dangerous and more vicious than those that we killed. That then very quickly led to stage 2, which is the horizontal escalation by Iran. We've seen this, by the way, in past historical episodes of a precision-guided air power to kill leaders, lashback. This was the most catastrophic lashback we've seen in history. Why is that? It's because as Iran's precision-guided drone campaign and missile campaign unfolded, it wasn't just the spasms of some dying body, as was portrayed in the opening days. It was coherent. It was organized. It was clear. They had an idea of how this would unfold over time. Well, we saw first that horizontal escalation did damage, and that's when the oil prices shot up initially. But then we saw they moved to close the Straits of Hormuz, or I should say not exactly close, but control. So now, today, after 29 days of war, Iran is more dangerous and more powerful than it was before the war. In fact, it's an oil hegemon controlling 20% of the world's oil, more than any other country on the planet. The United States produces 16% of world oil production. And this, if left for weeks or months or years, will enrich Iran tremendously. Iran will go from oil hegemon to great power in the Middle East. This is what we're talking about. And they have the nuclear capability. They haven't fashioned the nuclear weapons yet, but this enriched uranium that this was all about, that started the whole thing, is still there. And it's enough for 10 to 16 bombs. That's why we're heading to stage 3. And I laid this out before the first bombs fell, by the way, the 3 stages we would go through. Stage 3 is the ground operations. I call it the ground power dilemma because this is going to also then become a trap. If we cross the line into even limited ground operations, we are probably talking about a 3 to 6 months war of attrition. So this is not just another blow that will be one more blow. The whole house of cards by Iran will collapse. This is the trap. It's not just an escalation ladder, it's a trap. So I've laid out 3 stages and I've tried to be clear. And what they are phase shifts. They're not just a little bit more escalation at each stage. So there's a reason why it's stage 1, then it's stage 2, then it's stage 3. And again, stage 1 was just think of it simply, US bombing. Doesn't hits target, not strategically successful. Stage 2, Iran reaction,
Right.
lash back in different ways. And then stage 3 is US up the ante again, go up the rung to ground forces. So that's a very simplistic way to think about it, but it is quite accurate. And we're in between stage 2, the Iranian horizontal escalation. Now they've got the Strait of Hormuz. They still have that enrichment for nuclear weapons. And they're on the cusp now, 6 months, a year from now, from being the richest country in the world with oil and nuclear weapons. So this is what we're talking about.
Not
And
nuclear
that
weapons.
means they will be even more powerful. So that's why they're heading to stage 3, which is the ground war. I'm not saying they want stage 3. I'm not saying they're eager to go to ground operations. I'm saying they're being sucked into that because there just are no other off ramps. There's no golden off ramp. There's no easy way out. If you're going to cut a deal, I'm glad to talk about what it could look like. But once I
Yes.
lay it out for you, you're going to see, oh my goodness gracious, that's really what you would have to give Iran to give up the power it has. This is not as a month ago. This is not Iran as like the 20th most powerful country on the planet. This is now Iran as in the top 5. So now what's happened with Iran is they've really shot up, you see. And as time goes on, we just have to remember this wealth, this oil, this 20%. This has always been. It was a famous book when I was a graduate student called The Prize. Daniel Yergin, I'll give him some kudos here. He called it The Prize. This has been the power for decades and decades.
The first phase of this conflict has made one thing very clear. Winning some battles doesn't mean you've won the war. The opening strikes hit their short-term targets, but they didn't achieve the big goal, a weaker, more cooperative Iran. In fact, the opposite happened. Iran's leaders have dug in harder, they've coordinated better with their allies, and most importantly, they've turned the pressure into real power by controlling key energy routes. So instead of looking weak, Iran is actually coming out of this round with more influence and a clear plan. That changes everything. Now the conflict isn't just about escalating the fight anymore. It's starting to look like it will come down to a deal. And the cost of ending this thing could end up being a lot higher than anyone expected. Let's get back to the video.
So right now, there's only 2 ways to end this conflict. On the battlefield, and that's what mostly we've been talking about, and then on the negotiating table, that would be cutting a deal. Now, given the power that Iran has amassed in the last month, you would have to give them an inordinate set of benefits in order to get them to give up that power. So this is what we're talking about with the deal. It's not just get them to stop firing missiles because they may promise, oh, sure, we'll stop firing missiles. And then a month later, just like Israel has promised, they'll do X, Y, or Z, and
Yeah.
then they break the promise. Well, Iran could do that too. So it's the power that's the issue here. So what that means is what would be worth it to Iran to give up being the world's oil hegemon? That's really what we're talking about. And this is the problem for President Trump and the GCC countries of Saudi Arabia and UAE. So now, before the bombing started, a month ago, Feb 27, there was an offer on the table. Iran was willing to cut a deal with the United States. It was sort of Obama 2, the JCPOA 2.0. And what the idea was is that Iran this time would keep its 15% enriched, its 5%, excuse me, enriched uranium, not send it out of the country. Well, President Trump decided, Oval Office, 3:15 p.m. on Friday afternoon. We actually know everything about this. It's been published. He decided against it, and that's when he went for the bombing.
Yeah.
Or really to give Israel the green light to do the bombing.
Yeah.
That was the
For the
specific detail.
assassination of the Ayatollah.
That's right, of the supreme leader and so forth and so on here. But now that has not just failed, but it's left Iran amazingly more powerful. I don't even know if Iran could have imagined that this would really come into being. Okay, they're not really following my stages, sir. So it's not like they're following and others are not. So what you are seeing here then is you have to give Iran more. So they're going to get to keep their 3.5% enriched uranium for sure. Now they're probably going to want to keep all their enriched uranium.
Which
You
is
see what I
60%.
mean?
Which
The
is
60% too. They are, and I said they would want the oil sanctions lifted. Well, Scott Bessent's already lifted the oil sanctions on them because we can't afford any less oil on the market, or else instead of $115 for Brent, it'll go to 130, 140. So this is why we're letting Iran sell its oil and let Iran make all this money and put the money in Chinese banks. So one thing you could try to give them, and this to show you what you would have to give them, is an enforceable military containment of Israel. Enforceable military containment of Israel.
what would
Now,
that
what might that look like? I think it
NPT?
might have,
You think
pardon me?
they'll make Israel sign the NPT?
That's one step I'm going to. So number one, you pressure Israel to sign the NPT, and then actual on-site inspection in Dimona during the signing ceremony.
That's humiliation for Israel.
Well, I'm explaining right away why you're not. So, but I'm just looking at, I'm not telling you Israel will go for this and they'll fight tooth and nail. I'm not telling you President Trump will go for this. This is a big political cost for President Trump. I'm telling you what is the kind of deal that a power that has 20% of the world's oil in its grip would even listen to, even to start the conversation. You see, this isn't the Iran of a month ago. We're still operating, I think, in a mindset that we have power, meaning America has all this power. We have this escalation dominance. Iran is a pygmy of some kind. It's this little itty bitty thing. And somehow they will just wake up and realize they've been defeated. Well, Iran's not getting the memo that they're losing the war. They're not getting the memo they've been defeated. They're cashing in on the money. They've made already about $2 billion in sales of their oil since the war has been going on. They're on track, as I'm telling you, 50 to 75 billion. And this can get even worse. Their leverage, their use of leverage here is only beginning. This isn't topping out. This is the beginning of their use of the oil leverage and also fertilizer leverage. So it's not, even though we talk about it as oil, we need to recall 30% of the world's oil. Now, why does this matter so for countries like India? As the price of oil goes up, the price of food goes up, the richest countries in the world, America, Europe, Canada, they won't like it, but they'll pay those prices rather than go without. Now, once the supply shrinks, however, and the price goes up and you tilt more supply, where is it coming from? The poorer countries in the world. They will not just have higher prices, they'll have actual shortages. And that will be true for the bottom 25% of the planet. About 2.5 billion people in the next few months are going to start have massive fuel shortages. And they use that fuel not just to drive to the grocery store, they use it for cooking, they use it for food. The food shortage of the fertilizer is going to hit the poorest countries by far the hardest. And so this will morph, this problem. As bad as it seems right now, we haven't even begun to see the actual economic effects.
The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has already triggered what analysts are calling the largest disruption in the history of the global oil market, with massive portions of global supply either delayed, rerouted, or completely halted. Oil prices have surged past $100, with projections suggesting even higher spikes if the situation continues to escalate. And this isn't just a temporary shock, it's a structural disruption with no easy alternative routes. At the same time, Iran's position inside this chaos is becoming clearer. While other Gulf producers struggle to export due to blocked routes and damaged infrastructure, Iran has managed to maintain and even strengthen its oil flows, particularly toward strategic partners like China. On top of that, new policies, like charging massive tolls for ships passing through the strait, are turning geography into direct revenue, adding another layer of financial power. This is exactly the kind of leverage Robert Pape is warning about, not just surviving the conflict, but converting it into long-term strategic advantage. But the consequences extend far beyond Iran or the Middle East. Global markets are already reacting violently. Energy prices are feeding directly into inflation, supply chain disruptions, and rising food costs. The IMF has warned that this war could derail fragile economic recoveries, particularly in developing nations that are most vulnerable to fuel and food shortages. In some regions, we're already seeing early signs of rationing, panic buying, and economic strain, signals that this could evolve into a much broader crisis if the conflict drags on. And perhaps most importantly, the longer this continues, the more irreversible these shifts become. Energy markets are being reshaped, trade routes are being rewritten, alliances are being tested. What started as a military operation is now transforming into a geopolitical realignment, one where power is increasingly defined not by battlefield wins, but by control over critical systems like energy, shipping, and global supply chains. Which brings us back to the central question raised in this video. If every phase of escalation is making Iran stronger, richer, and more influential, then what does the end of this conflict actually look like? And more importantly, how do you negotiate with a country that now holds leverage over the very systems the world depends on? If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more deep dive analysis like this, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this conflict is already reshaping global power, or is there still a way to contain it before the next phase begins? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.